Hello everybody and welcome to my Afterthoughts video regarding the movie The Prestige. Wow, another great movie by Christopher Nolan and his brother. A very awesome script, great story, very good performances and a very unique subject that was very thought-provoking. So it was a pleasure watching this movie. My mind was blown several times, so thanks for the recommendation. Now, the story is pretty simple once you understand it. It's about those two rival magicians and they try to outdo each other, trying to be the best magician in the world. Now, it pretty much all came down to this one trick, which was the transporting man. Now, the first magician, played by Christian Bale, Borden, he used a twin brother nobody knew existed. And he went to the great length to convince his brother to cut off two of his fingers in order to be a perfect match. And of course, the trick worked out perfectly. People's minds were blown. Now, the second magician, played by Hugh Jackman, was Engineer. Now, he convinced Tesla to build a machine that creates a double or a clone of himself. And then he used that in his performance. And of course, this was the best trick the world has ever seen. Now, of course, the downside of this was that after every performance, the clone had to die, drown in the water tank. So that's, of course, going even further and was even more savage than whatever Christian Bale's character did. So, of course, once you watch the movie again, or you do editing like I do, there's a lot of things that will make a lot more sense if you watch the movie the second time. And that's very interesting. For example, whenever Engineer asked Borden, what knot did you tie? You know, after Engineer's wife drowned so brutally in the water tank. And Borden always said, I just don't know. And that was kind of bizarre at first because of course he knows, but if you watch the acting and you watch the actor, the character was actually honest and very sincere. So that threw me a little bit off. And now, of course, we know that he didn't know because it was the twin brother who tied the knot. And very similar with Sarah. Whenever Borden said, I love you, then sometimes she believed it. And sometimes she got the feeling that it's not true. And of course, this is now also explained because there were two different men. And a last example, the little boy at the beginning of the movie, he watched the bird trick being performed and they crushed the cage. And the little boy was very aware of that. And he said, yeah, but where is the brother? And of course, that's kind of a foreshadowing that Christian Bale's character Borden actually had a twin brother, which of course we had no clue at this point of the movie, but it's interesting those foreshadowing moments that we then, at the second viewing becomes much more clear and therefore also very brilliant, So that was very interesting. I also noticed the rivalry between Tesla and Edison. I think that was actually a thing back then. They were indeed rivals. So that was interesting. What else? The funniest scene? Well, there wasn't much funny about that movie, but I would say whenever Engier's drunk double was on stage, or on camera, that was probably the funniest moments in the movie. It was always funny when it was just a loose cannon, and which brings me to the point, which I don't want to forget, how amazing the performances were by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, portraying those different people, being the same person, of course, so cleverly and so perfectly that you really, as the audience, had a sense that those were two different personas. So, I mean, they are world-class actors, but I have to say that was brilliantly done, a really great performance. The most brutal moment, that is a little tougher because there were a lot of brutal moments in that movie. Everything from crushing the bird, and the suicide, and Engier's wife drowning in that water tank and cutting off the fingers. That was all brutal. But I think nothing compares to the whole concept with the clones, where Angier booked 100 performances, and of course that means that 100 clones, or after every show a clone had to terribly die in one of those water tanks. And of course, if you just think, well, it's just a clone, yeah, that's one thing, but it wasn't just a clone. I mean, Angier was talking about that he never knew if he was the man in the box or the man on the stage, therefore indicating that they actually shared the consciousness, therefore they're the same person. So one of them always had to drown. I mean, how horrible is that? And what a huge price to pay to have such a great trick. I mean, that is probably the most brutal aspect of the whole film, is the fact that he was willing to go that far to let somebody die after every performance. I mean, crazy. Well, two more thoughts. One thought was, I was wondering during editing, I was wondering how the movie experience would be if this movie would actually play out in chronological order. Because in this movie, The Prestige, I think we jumped between like 3 different timelines, when they're reading the diary and everything. I was wondering, how would that impact you as a viewer if that movie would be told in chronological order? And if I would have the time, I would cut it together and check it out, but I don't have the time, believe me. But that was just an interesting thought to see how that will play out. And the last thing is, watching a movie like that and see those two characters go so far makes you wonder, how far would you go? Or how far would I go, to fulfill your dreams? I mean, just think about what you're passionate about, or what your biggest dream would be, and how far would you push it? Because Angier, he pushed the envelope really, really far. And of course, this subject matter, you can't just answer in a few seconds. That takes some serious thoughts to visualize how your life could look like if you would achieve this or that, but what price would you be willing to pay? And this is kind of a prominent subject here in Hollywood, like every second person wants to be rich and famous, everybody wants to be a celebrity, and I tell you, there are people here that would do anything, and if I say anything, I mean anything, to achieve that, and I'm sure a lot of people have given everything, they go so far, they would even literally sell their soul, and whatever that means, I leave that up to you. But I just tell you, there is a dark cloud hanging over Hollywood because of that subject. What would people do in order to achieve something, but that's a different rabbit hole we're not going to explore today. But all in all, a wonderful movie, very thought-provoking. I loved it. Thanks so much for the recommendation, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye-bye.